thank you for that very kind introduction. I direct the Princeton University Bobst Center for Peace and Justice, but I think that the program that Wolfgang refers to mainly is one we have called Innovations for Successful Societies, which is about institution building in fragile states. And although my expertise is largely in Africa, the program is global and has worked in over 45 countries. Much of its work goes public in about 2 weeks. But it is one of the reasons why Wolfgang and I talk to one another so much, particularly about Afghanistan. And I'm very, very honored to be here today with a tremendous group of panelists, a tremendous group of people in some of the other panels as well, to talk about these kinds of issues. Let me introduce each of the speakers. We're not going to go quite in the order in the program. Ambassador Tanin will speak first. Ambassador Zahir Tanin is the permanent representative of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan to the United Nations. He presented his credentials to Kofi Annan, Secretary General of the United Nations, in December 2006. During his tenure at the United Nations, Ambassador Tanin has held a number of other positions in the UN organization. He was first appointed Vice President of the General Assembly during the 63rd session in 2008 and continues to hold that position. Ambassador Tanin is a graduate of Kabul Medical University. He began his career in 1980, working as a journalist in Kabul. He was editor-in-chief of Akhbar al-Hafta and Sabawin magazine until 1992. He later authored several books on Afghanistan, and he produced a landmark 29-part program, The Oral History of Afghanistan in the 20th Century, which was broadcast on BBC. And I have to say that I truly appreciate that, because part of our project is actually to collect oral histories with reform leaders in Somaliland and many other parts of the world. Before his appointment as permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Tanin worked for 11 years with the BBC as an editor and producer. The second speaker today will be Johannes, and I'm going to massacre the last name, but Johannes Hudopa, who is a strategic planning advisor at the Afghan Ministry of Counter-Narcotics and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. He managed the UN Resident Coordinator's Office in Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009. Before completing his master's in public administration at the Woodrow Wilson School and at Princeton University in 2002, he earned an MA in cross-cultural communication at universities in Graz, Moscow, and Dublin, and worked on post-conflict social rehabilitation processes in Croatia and Bosnia. In 1997, he joined the Austrian Central Bank's Foreign Research Division, and from 2002 to 2008, he supported UN country teams in Tajikistan, Georgia, Sierra Leone, Albania, Nepal, and Kazakhstan. From 2008, he has served in Afghanistan with just a few interruptions. The third speaker will be Christine Fair, who is Assistant Professor at the Center for Peace and Security Studies at Georgetown University. She has served as a senior political scientist with the RAND Corporation, a political officer to the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, in Kabul, and a senior research associate at the U.S. Institute of Peace's Center for Conflict Analysis and Prevention. She has authored, co-authored, and co-edited several books, including Treading Softly on Sacred Ground, Counterinsurgency Operations in Sacred Space, The Madrasa Challenge, and Fortifying Pakistan, the Role of U.S. Internal Security Assistance. She's authored many other books and articles on security issues in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. She is a member of the International Institute of Strategic Studies, the Council on Foreign Relations, and serves on the editorial boards of several journals. Next speaker will be Christopher McPherson, Special Assistant in the Security Cooperation Reform Task Force within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He has also completed assignments in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and the Office of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Legislative Affairs. Mr. McPherson recently returned from an 8-month rotation to Afghanistan, where he served as the Information Operations Officers for an infantry battalion and agribusiness development team in Laghman province, as well as on the Information Operations Task Force in Kabul. He holds an MPA from the Woodrow Wilson School, and before attending the Woodrow Wilson School, he held a variety of positions at the National Security Agency and served on the National Security Council at the White House Situation Room. He has also worked for the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Brussels, Belgium, and the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research in New York City, and I believe he was a major player in a policy workshop on PRTs, Provincial Reconstruction Teams, when he was here at the Woodrow Wilson School, and that report's been widely cited and I think used by many. Finally, Daoud Yaqub, former Director of Policy in the Afghan National Security Council. Mr. Yaqub is currently a non-resident associate at LISD at Princeton University. He has been a key participant and behind-the-scenes insider in Afghanistan's unfolding history and political transition over the last decade. In 1998, after graduating from the University of Pittsburgh Law School, Mr. Yaqub moved to Washington, D.C. to become executive director of the Afghanistan Foundation, a Capitol Hill-based advocacy group established by a former member of the U.S. Congress. The foundation sought to enhance Track 2 initiatives on Afghanistan, such as the Loya Jirga, and serve as a forum for elevating Washington's policy debate regarding Afghanistan. After participating in the 2001 Bonn conference that formed the post-Taliban government of Afghanistan in mid-December 2001, Mr. Yaqub accompanied Hamid Karzai on his journey to Kabul and was the first Afghan-American to join the office of the president. In that capacity, he worked as deputy spokesperson and senior foreign policy aide to the president. In June 2002, Mr. Yaqub was the first appointee to the newly established Afghanistan National Security Council and played a significant role in building the Afghan NSC into a major security and policy organization of the Afghan government. He resigned from the NSC in 2008 in order to pursue a PhD, and he's completing that now. Although he said to me he's actually spending much of his time in Kabul. Finally, our discussant for this panel is Ciara Knudsen, Senior Advisor at the Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review at the United States Department of State. Previously, she served as Executive Officer for the U.S. Government Integrated Civil Military Action Group in the American Embassy in Kabul, a joint civil-military staff that was tasked with developing an integrated government campaign plan for Afghanistan. Leading up to the stand-up of the ICMAG in 2007 and 2008, Ms. Knudsen worked with provincial teams throughout Afghanistan to unify the U.S. government effort in the field. She was the Afghanistan program manager at the Liechtenstein Institute at Princeton University in 2004, 2005, and led a Princeton team to conduct fieldwork on U.S. assistance in Liberia, another project, I think, in which we were at least tangentially involved. She previously served in East Timor from 2000 to 2002 as a social services advisor to the Secretary of State for Labor and Solidarity under the UN East Timor Transition Administration. She received her master's here and holds a BA in Development Studies from Brown University and the University of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, all of you. So I believe the ground rules have shifted just slightly. Each person has 10 minutes or 8 minutes?
Rather 8.
Rather 8? Okay. And then we'll open it up to general discussion. Thank you. Ambassador.